Hello and welcome to this week's Wild. I'm Sasha Norris and I'm up at 7:30 in the morning on this crisp October day in this woodland to meet a group of people who frankly are much more dedicated than me because they got up much earlier. Actually, I'm a bit late. They do it every week, get up very early, come out into woodlands so they can play with birds' feet. Andy, am I late? Have I missed everything?
No, you haven't. No, we just got to check a net. So.
We're going to go and check the net now?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, have you got your...
Yeah, everyone's here, so...
Your gang?
Yeah, so follow me.
Right. There's quite a lot of oohing going on because they've caught a woodpecker. Okay, what have we got there, Andy, then?
Well, this is a great spotted woodpecker. This is a female great spotted woodpecker because the male has a red spot on the back of the head.
Right.
Red nape.
But she's got a beautiful red...
Yes, they all have that.
Tail, look at that.
They all have the red
fantastic.
undertail coverts.
And a lot of people, this looks like a tropical bird. A lot of people might not realise that there are birds this colourful in Britain.
Ah, well, yes. They might not, but there are.
But you realise, of course, Andy.
Yeah, great spotted woodpeckers are quite common, actually, and even in Oxford. You're right in town.
Right.
You can see great spots. This is a first-year bird, incidentally, because can you see that these greater coverts are brown, contrasting with these black median coverts?
So these are the long feathers?
No, these ones here are juvenile feathers.
Okay, these are the little feathers that are just at the top of the wing, and they're called greater coverts.
These greater coverts, that's right.
Right.
And they're brown because they're juvenile feathers.
They're more brown than black, aren't they? They're very dark still.
So it's molted these ones.
Right.
But not these. And if it was an adult, it would have molted all of those. So you wouldn't see that contrast.
Okay. And what are you going to do with him now? Her now?
Her now, yes. We're just going to stick this in a bag for the moment and take it back to our lab and ring it and weigh it, and then it can be on its way.
Okay, so you're putting it inside this bag.
Yep.
What's the purpose of that? That's to
well,
keep
you
it
have to
quiet
carry them. We have several birds and we have to carry them back, and they're quiet. Just like if you have a budgerigar and you put something over the cage at night, it keeps them quiet.
Because they can't see anything, so they don't get so
so they're much more relaxed if they're in the bag.
Okay, and that hangs on there. I have to confess to having done this a few times before, but...
That's right. So shall we go and see what...
You taught me, Andy. Right, okay. What else we've got? What else have we got? What have you got there, Chris?
I've got a great tit. It looks like a female, and she's been previously ringed.
Oh, right, okay, so she's already got a ring on her, which is the purpose of today.
Yeah.
So you're going to...
So we get information... Hello. Shh, it's okay. It's okay. Just get this off your head here.
Just have to... This is a very fine net, isn't it? And that's how they get caught, because they fly into the net and get tangled up. And then you have to gently take them out. Are you being trained at the moment, Chris, or are you already a ringer? Because, Andy, you have to be fully trained, don't you, to do this? It's
yes, that's right.
It's a fine art in a way, isn't it?
That's right.
Yes.
To become fully trained to handle any species in Britain takes a couple of years, and to be able to take all the measurements, identify everything, fit the rings, and most importantly probably getting them out of the net safely.
And this is because the birds are very delicate.
Yes.
And you could sort of harm them
It's partly because birds are delicate, and yes, you can damage them if you don't know what you're doing, but it's also because we're collecting a large amount of technical information, and it's important that everyone in the country that contributes to this data set is doing things in the same way.
Right, okay, so it's consistency.
That's right, so it's quality control for the data as well as bird welfare.
Okay, now we've collected all the birds, that was very quick, and we're going to go back to your little pixie hut now and,
pixie hut.
and see what we've found. Okay, so what have we got here?
Find out. Let's find out. Most of the rest of the birds are tits of one sort or another, and that's what we specialise in here. That's the main research that we do is on tits.
On great tits?
Mainly. And this is a great tit.
Okay, this is a great... So this is, Andy, is your specialist bird.
Yes.
If you were on Mastermind, this would be the bird that you would choose as your specialist subject, wouldn't
I'm
it?
afraid it probably would, yes.
Okay, and this bird, as testament to your dedication, this bird is already
ringed.
Because frankly, you've got them all. Okay,
Yes.
now tell me why, it's got its little ring there on its leg. Tell me why you actually put the rings on the legs.
Right, well, the rings carry a unique serial number. And so this is simply a way of identifying birds as individuals. So this, to us, is no longer just a great tit in the wood. It is a specific great tit, and it has a recorded life history. I mean, it has a life history that we know something more about.
Okay, so you're able to follow the kind of the how this bird fares through its life in a sense.
Yes, exactly.
As it goes through the
Exactly.
process of going to school and graduating from university and,
That's right.
and
We have
raising young of its own.
That's right. We have nearly 1,000 nest boxes in the wood, and we ring all of the chicks in the nest boxes. 95310. Now, what we can tell from the bird itself is that it's an adult, because in exactly the same way as the great spotted woodpecker, it's molted. It's molted the primary coverts here, so
And
it's
what
had
would
a
they look
complete
like
molt.
if it hadn't?
These would be greenish in a
Okay.
first-year bird. So if it had hatched this year, in 2001, these feathers would be green-edged, the same as the mantle here.
And how
But
old
as
do we
the-
think this bird might be?
All I can tell at the moment is that it wasn't hatched this year, this
Right.
calendar year, but by checking the records and looking up this ring number, hopefully I would be able to tell more about it.
Okay, so you would then take this information you've collected today back to a database
That's right.
and compare the number against when
That's
this
right.
bird was previously. So it could have been 3 years ago,
It could be.
and you'd know
It
that
could
it was
be.
at least sort of 3 years old.
That's right.
It's like a sort of piecing together the
Yes,
detective work, isn't it?
that's right. I also know this is a female because the belly is mostly white, and a male would be black.
It looks
black
quite
stripe.
yellow, its belly. When you say white, you mean this sort of area here?
Yes, that's right.
Whereas the male would be sort of very dark, would it?
That's right. It would be
Right.
black. Have a
Hmm.
wide black belly stripe. So we have its wing length of 75. And take its inside leg measurement.
And if you've done this with a bird before, you'll be able to know whether it's grown.
Yes, that's right. The wing length in particular usually increases across a molt. So each time they molt, the wings get a little bit longer.
And they molt once a year, do they?
Yes,
Right.
in late summer.
So every year they grow a bit, sort of in stages.
Yeah, tiny little bit, but only the plumage. The actual body size doesn't change. So this tarsus measurement probably won't change.
Tarsus being the
Sorry,
the
that's
leg,
the inside.
which isn't
inside
the
leg. The
equivalent
leg
of a foot bone, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. This joint in a bird is your ankle, effectively,
Right.
and those are the toes.
Right. Okay.
That's right. One of the interesting things that's come out of this work over 20 years is that the birds' beaks change size between summer and winter. So they have long, thin beaks in the summer when they're eating insects, and short, stouter bills in the winter when they're eating beech moss.
And how does a bird change its bill?
Well, the outer covering of its bill is made of keratin, the same as fingernail, a sort of horn, and it's continually growing and being worn away by the food it eats and by bill wiping.
Right.
So I just want a couple more measurements of this. I can measure the amount of fat on it just by a visual score. And this has got a lot of fat on it, actually.
So you're blowing on its chest.
I'm just parting the feathers, and then I'm looking at the amount of fat between the two bones of the wishbone,
Right.
effectively. So I'll show you this. I won't be able to talk while I'm doing it.
Okay. Fair enough.
So that sort of salmony pink colour is actually fat.
Okay, and what does that tell you about the
so
bird?
that is actually a score of 4, which means it's actually carrying a lot of fat for this time in the morning, which is quite surprising.
And if you're a bird, it's quite good to be fat, isn't it?
Carrying fat, well, fat is an energy store, and it's essential for them to have enough fat on them when they go to roost in the evening, because they're not going to be feeding at night. So that is their energy reserve to survive the night.
Okay.
But we discovered that they minimise the amount of fat that they carry, and we think that this is because there is a risk from sparrowhawks in being too heavy. You can't get away from predators quickly enough if you're too heavy.
And you also found that there was a relationship between the amount of fat that a bird carried when at times in history when there have been more or less predators, didn't you?
Yes, that's right. Looking at our records over the course of 40 years, we've found that during the 1960s, when sparrowhawks were absent, the great tits were very much heavier. So if we look at this bird, this weighs 17.8 grams, which is a fairly average weight for a female at this time of year.
You do know precisely what an average weight is for a female great tit, don't you?
I do for great tits, yes. I have all 7,000 in my head, but but not great spotted woodpeckers. But during the 1960s, the average weight of great tit was over 20 grams. And if you think of that in percentage terms, that's a huge difference. This is the average weight. And some of
they
them
went
were
up from what to what?
From about 18 grams to about 21 grams.
Okay, and that was at a time when there were fewer sparrowhawks?
When there were no sparrowhawks. There were no sparrowhawks in the 1960s because they'd all died because of pesticides. They were eating birds that had eaten grain that had been dressed with insecticides.
DDT.
DDT, exactly.
And that was causing them to have their eggshells to be thinned.
Exactly.
And that's where Silent Spring, the book, Rachel Carson's book, came from, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay, so then there were fewer sparrowhawks because they were being poisoned by that. And the great tits responded by putting on weight because it was good for them to carry weight because it helped them to survive. And they didn't need to be lightweight and quick to get away because there were no
predators. Exactly.
Okay. And what's happening to them now?
Well, now they're back at the same sort of weights as they were in the 1950s. Because we've had our sparrowhawks back for over 20 years, and there were sparrowhawks around in the 1950s.
So they've had to compromise?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
So now they can't carry 23 grams of weight because there are sparrowhawks around.
We need to be quick.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
which is what we need to be because we've got to get on with it.
Oh, we've got to get on. Okay, right.
Okay.
Got a bag, Andy?
Yep. Hi, can you? I've untangled that. If you go in there, you'll have a nice little cup. Okay.
So they got him.
You got it. Well done.
I don't have a. I do have a bag.
There's a great abundance of great tits, aren't there?
Yes, we catch more great tits than anything else. Here. Mainly because that's what we mainly catch great tits because that's what we're trying to catch. So we provide the right bait for great tits.
No. You have to go move the bird so this doesn't.
It's a rare sight.
It is.
Oh no! I got caught.
You're not sure what size ring he'd take.
I am. I know what size ring he'd take. So we weren't here for this bit before because I couldn't get out of bed. But now, Andy, you're going to show us how you actually put the nets up to catch the birds in the first place, aren't you?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so what are you doing?
So first of all, we need to tie some guys onto trees to support the poles.
Okay, so it's a bit like a tent. You put a guy rope up. Shall I do that? Okay, slipped half hitch, done it.
There you go.
Right, okay. And now you're undoing the net. You're getting the net out of the bag. Okay, there's a delay while the pole is moved over this way.
Because
Okay,
we're utterly...
Eduardo. Right, so Eduardo's doing that, and we're just opening the anacharysis, isn't it? It's organised in panels, isn't it? The net.
That's right.
I think
It all makes sense.
I need just one more guy.
No, that would go.
Oh, this will stretch.
I just need one more guy as well.
Yes,
Sorry,
I'm,
I'll
I'm
stop.
married.
Stop the cheesy jokes now. Okay, so we now have the net erect.
Yeah, that's fine, because the way this is arranged is that the net is supported on 5 strings, which we call shelf strings, that run right the length of the net.
Right.
So there's a loop, like this one, on the end of each of those strings, and then that creates a pocket in the net, which we call a shelf. So these panels between these strings are called shelves, and the bird goes in there, hits the net, and
Flies in.
flies
Tried to
in
get the shot, but
and
we
is
couldn't.
supported in the net, suspended in the net in that
You're
pocket.
gonna,
So if I demonstrate with a bird bag,
right.
that's how it's caught in the net.
Okay, it struggles a bit and it gets caught up.
Yeah.
And then you come and get it out.
That's right.
Okay, and you can't do this in different kinds of weather, can you? You can't do it in rain or a
No.
lot of wind.
No, we can't do this in any sort of rain, because the birds get wet, and obviously when the bird's in the net, it's just going to get wet if it's raining, you know. And we can't do it in a wind force of more than about 4, because the nets become tight and the birds just bounce off
So
them.
it blows out and the
That's
bird
right. The birds
doesn't
just
get
bounce
caught.
off them, really.
Sort of.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. But we're okay here because it's very sheltered. I think the wind strength is less than 4 today anyway, but this particular place is very sheltered, so we're okay in here.
And this is a good place to catch them, is it?
Yeah, it's pretty good. We have this feeder that we've filled up, which is a fancy design that makes it squirrel proof. We have a lot of trouble in the wood with squirrels taking our peanuts, so the birds don't get them. So we have a stainless steel pole, a feeder on top of a stainless steel pole.
With an upside down sort of lampshade. Well, no,
Yeah,
a right way up lampshade that stops the squirrels going up.
Metal dog bowl.
And that'll attract the birds in, we hope. So
Yes.
should we
that's
go back and wait, do we?
Yes, sure.
Right.
That's right. So that's adult male.
So this is a male great tit, and you can see that it's got loads of black on its belly. That was the difference you were talking about, isn't it?
That's right. This is also an adult.
It's quite lively, isn't it? Do you find they vary in personality, Andy? The birds? Is that a no? I think that's a no.
No,
The
it's
great
not a
tits
no.
are really
Ask me that
personal.
again, I'm sorry.
Ask you again. Okay,
Yeah.
do you find they vary in personality, Andy?
Yes, to some extent. I mean, some birds bite you all the time, and others are much more relaxed. Most of them are quite relaxed about it.
When I was doing my sparrow research and I had sparrows in aviaries, I found that red, dark blue, who had these colour bands on their legs, you know, so you could identify them. Red, dark blue bit me every time really hard, whereas dark blue, white was really soft. They were all males,
They're all males.
so it wasn't, yeah. But so I think they definitely have personalities, Andy.
Yes.
That would be my contention.
Well, there are differences, certainly.
Differences between the birds, or between male and females. No, they were both males.
They're both males, yes, yes.
Are you following this?
He's trying.
Our cameraman got up at 5:30 in the morning to do this.
2.
I just want you to know.
That's
Whereas
good.
I, on the other hand, overslept and had fitful dreams about phoning you up and having all sorts of diseases, so I couldn't get up. Do you ever question yourself, Andy, and think, why am I blowing on the breast of the coal tits.
He's got some
That's
strange
not an
hobbies.
interesting collection of double entendres.
No. No. Well,
No.
no. Fighting to find the question on all of that. Do I question myself? No.
It's your life and your life's work.
We've discovered a great deal about these birds from looking at the amount of fat on them, actually, and it's been really fascinating. I mean, everyone assumed that birds would have just maximised the amount of fat that they carried. So it's cold in winter, the nights are long and the days are short and there isn't much food and you have to carry as much fat as you possibly can. And that would have been the assumption until about 10 years ago. And now, through these really detailed observations and through experiments, some of which we've done here at Whiteham, we've discovered it's very much more complex than that. And there is this relationship with the presence of predators like sparrowhawks and the amount of food that's available. In fact, it turns out that if there's more food around, they actually carry less fat on them.
Right.
So the amount of fat they carry is an insurance against starvation, and you don't have to take out so much insurance if there's
Because in a way,
food.
the food is hanging in the trees, and rather than on your body, you don't have.
Exactly.
Well, that's
exactly,
fascinating.
that's
Is it
right.
sort of the opposite of humans, really, isn't it? We sort of
Yes.
tend to,
Yes.
certainly in Western society, we tend to sort of have more fat when there's more fat around. But
Yes.
Do you go A for the chaffinch?
Yes.
Okay.
so, Eduardo, you're doing a PhD
Yeah,
in the EGI,
yeah.
and what's your interest in learning to do bird ringing?
Well, mainly because I'm working in the Canary Islands. And I have to stress that in the Canaries, the opposite is found as here. Birds don't need to store fat because they live in a mild winter. So the bottleneck is not the winter as here, it's the summer, the hot, dry summer of the Mediterranean climate. Well, it's not lucky because that's a bottleneck, which means that birds die.
Okay, so that's the time when things become difficult for them.
Yeah, because they cannot regulate the water balance, so they need to drink water during the summer, because the food doesn't provide them with enough water.
And do they find water? Or is it
Yeah,
often
there's
difficult?
the problem we have in the Canaries is that most of the water is canalized by pipelines right now. So birds.
So it's in canals.
It's in pipelines, so birds
Pipelines,
yeah. So birds cannot reach the water.
Yeah.
So we have to build drinking tables for them along, the different areas of forests. Mainly pine forest, because the laurel forest we get there is very humid, so water is available for the birds.
And are people doing that?
Yeah, there's Canarian Society of Ornithology who is working on that actually at the moment.
Oh, that's good. That's a heartwarming tale.
Yeah.
And what have you got there? You've got a chaffinch.
Yeah. Andy, I'm gonna give you the
Yes.
number here.
Yep.
It's N 200515.
N200515. Me.
Why are you saying that, Angie?
Well, from here, isn't this got? Is that uniformly black from where you're sitting? Don't bite yourself.
Oh, there's no contrast. I don't see any contrast.
Yeah, it is a 4.
What are we looking for?
We're trying to age this bird, and it's an adult because it's got very rounded tail tips. These large black spots on the centre tail feathers are an adult characteristic.
And when you say round, is that because they've been sort of worn away by?
No,
by hair,
it is actually the shape of the feather. The young bird would have more pointed tips. It's nothing to do with where. These are actually quite fresh because they molted in the last 3 months.
Right. Okay. So they're just very, very slightly as they get older.
That's right. It is just the shape of the feather. And this is an evenly, completely molted wing. So the primary coverts and the greater coverts, these are all black. There's no contrast between them, which you would see in a young bird because they would retain juvenile feathers. This hasn't, so it is a 4. And which 4 means it's an adult born before this year, and it's a male because it's going to have a blue crown and a black
Right.
forehead. And what they do is they molt into these blue feathers which have brown tips, and black feathers on the forehead which have brown tips, and those brown tips wear off gradually through the winter. So you can see this sort of browny cast to it. You can actually see the brown tips on the forehead
So that
there.
in the summer it's got its breeding plumage.
In just a few months' time,
So it'll be all
those
bright
tips
and
will
sexy.
have, that's right, these will have worn off, and that'll be completely black, and this will be bright blue.
And then it'll
be
start
quite
showing off
stunning.
to females and other males.
Exactly.
And are they
yeah.
territorial?
Yes,
So they'll be sort of
Yes.
showing off to the males to say get out of my territory.
highly territorial.
Eduardo's hard done by because he hasn't had his bird. Had his bird taken away
He's had
from
his
him.
bird taken away from him.
By Andy.
Not
How do
really.
you feel about that, Eduardo?
I'll sue.
Frankly,
I'll
so
sue
money.
him.
Oh, I'll just sue you if you broadcast that.
Do you hear that?